Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon with many of the turf friends we've met over the past 35 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and this is another EarthWorks podcast. I don't know that I've ever been more excited to say that I've got Dr. Fidanza, Dr. Mike Fidanza. And by the way, Mike, it's a running joke in my office. I've been saying your name wrong since I've known you, Dr. Fidanza, but I know it's Fidanza.
Well,
A good
no,
strong...
you say it so fast.
I know, I say it so fast, nobody
even
even knows. I know, but I've gotten scolded a number of times by a number of people, and I mean no disrespect. I have the utmost of respect for you. I was telling you this earlier when I told our team here at EarthWorks that I was going to have you on. Everybody to a T was incredibly excited. And I said to you before, this podcast probably is the only podcast in the world who has three hosts, all of which are Penn State graduates. Kevin Hicks,
that's great.
Penn State graduate. Jack Higgins, Penn State graduate. Joel Simmons, Penn State graduate. And I started my career on your campus. Now, at Berks campus, when I was there, and I don't want to say the date, the year, because it'll give my age away, there were three buildings on the campus, and the one had just been built. There was the library. I don't know the names anymore, but the library was there. The parking lot was there. One of the main classroom buildings was there. And then they built a student union that had a whole bunch of classrooms and a gym in it and all. Is there a name for that building?
Yeah, the library, the Toon Library, named after the Toon family of wealthy industrialists, right? In Reading, the student union building is the Perkins building.
Yeah, that had just been built.
Yeah, yes, and then the Lorson building was the first building there.
And that was the other one. That's it. So that's all I had when I was there. No dorms.
But that's great.
Yeah,
Joel, this is so exciting. You are like our most famous alumni.
Yeah, I don't think so, Mike. But thanks. You know, it's funny because I am a proud big brother of big brothers and big sisters, and my little brother, who is still very much a part of my family, ended up. I was matched with him when he was 7, and all. You know, I mean, he was a part of my life and my family since he was 7. He ended up going to Penn State, and he went to Berks campus. And he chose to go to Berks campus. And it had been one of the first times I'd been there. Now, this was probably early 2000s. And so I took him, and I'm like, I don't even know where I am. This place is huge. There's 3 or 4 dorm room buildings. And, you know, so where is your research center on the campus? I think I visited you there once, but you're behind the Larson building, right?
Well, yeah, right on the other side of Broadcasting Road now. The campus, it's expanded.
It has expanded a lot.
At the most capacity, I think we have around 2,000 students, or a little less than 2,000 students. And we have the dormitories and living space for about 900 beds there in the housing complex. And it's a great place to start. But the campus offers 4-year degrees now in business and science and engineering. So more and more students are staying there for 4 years, but we still get the ag students start out their first and second year and then go to University Park their third and fourth year.
Yeah.
But on the other side of Broadcasting Road was Pfeiffer Farm. And that was granted to the university or acquired back in the late 70s, early 80s. So on that side of the campus, it's about 95 acres. That's where I have some research plots. And you visited there a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I have, it's about a 35 acre area, and about maybe 5 acres is in turf right now. And it's kind of we're trying to kind of revitalize it. It kind of struggled there after the pandemic. Our technical support person retired, and the campus maintenance department was assigned the task to keep up with the mowing and the maintenance of the turf grass. And that was kind of challenging. So we're in the process of revitalizing the Ag Center. The Center for Agricultural Sciences and a Sustainable Environment, because there's other faculty involved in some ecology work. And so we're trying to restart the Ag Center. And we're thinking about getting some robotic mowers. That might be the way to go.
Very smart move. And very pertinent to the industry right now.
Yep. But that's where some of my research is, and a lot of the other research is actually done on golf courses and sports fields on site.
In the area, yeah.
And we got, as you know, the industry is great, Joel. We have here in Pennsylvania, Mid-Atlantic region, outstanding cooperators, golf course superintendents, and some sports field folks that really allow me to go and visit their sites and conduct research and kill some turf. Sometimes
Exactly. Well, who wouldn't want Dr. Mike showing up on their property? Of course, you get there and you look at a fairy ring and you get all excited, and they're like, "Oh, for God's sake!"
Look, I have my official fairy ring coffee mug. If you can
perfect.
see that. The mushroom.
The mushroom mug.
And Joel, I don't mean to take up your time here, but I think maybe
your time.
Listeners know I grew up on a mushroom farm in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And my father was a mushroom farmer, and that's why I learned to like the love of mushrooms and mycology, and my goal was to be a mushroom farmer. But when I went to Penn State, I met Dr. Waddington, Tom Watsky, those guys, and
I met them all as well when I went to Penn State.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I went to Maryland.
But I didn't become a mycologist, though.
Yeah, no, you're better off. You're better. Well, listen, and I think your listeners know, your folks that know you, your career started, or your earlier career, you were worked for Penn State and Cooperative Extension.
I was a county agent. Not many people even know what that is anymore.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, I ask that question when I do seminars, and not many people, nobody under the age of 40 knows what a county agent is.
Yeah, but they were vital. Even like, again, I don't want to hijack the talk here, but the conversation. But when I was a young lad, going to the mushroom farm meetings with my father, and Dr. Paul Weiss was a professor at Penn State plant pathology, and he would come down and give the seminars, and he worked with the county agents. So as a young lad, I knew all about extension and how extension worked with farmers, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to Penn State and study. I want to learn how to. I want to study mushrooms, mycology, plant pathology, and then I was going to come back and take over the mushroom farm, make a lot of money. But
that's a good goal. That's a lofty plan.
I know, but then I got interested in research and plant pathology, so I went a different direction.
Got the bug.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens sometimes.
Anyway, when I was a county agent, I was in this northeast or the southeast corner here. So I was in Northampton County, but the whole the whole corner here, Chester County, which is where you were.
Yes.
We would get together as county agents, and I remember maybe more than once we went down your way and toward mushroom farms. I might have even been yours. I don't even know.
Oh, excellent.
I was one of the more, that's the first time I'd ever known anything about mushrooms. It's fascinating what you guys do as mushroom farmers. It's really quite amazing. And I'm sure it's changed a lot over the last whatever years, but it is interesting. There's production houses. They still rely on a great deal of labor, right? Yeah.
But we're starting to see, if you call it a paradigm shift, they're going to have thinking about going more mechanized processing and mechanized production systems like they do in Europe, because the labor is not there anymore, and it's a challenge to get labor.
Same thing on the golf course, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that may be the next generation of mushroom farmers. They need to make that switch from they got to refit. It's a lot of capital investment, improvement to convert it from a traditional mushroom production system to now mechanized. So we'll see what happens with the next generation if they can make that switch.
So they can actually harvest mushrooms mechanically? Don't they grow in different speeds and sizes?
Well, yeah, they're growing on the substrate material or the composted substrate, and but they can be grown on trays and almost like conveyor belt type systems with a smaller amount of substrate, but multiple levels of trays. And there's basically have to refit the production houses. And so when they sort of, you try to get them to the production to grow all at once at the same time, same rate, so they can be harvested at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing a very good job explaining, but it's a paradigm shift at the way they traditionally grow the mushrooms. So it's going to be different. We'll see what happens. What happens. But there's still the specialty mushrooms that people love, the lion's mane, and that's very popular. And so they're still grown by hand, and there's some others. So there's still going to be the traditional ways of farming mushrooms.
I take a lion's mane tincture almost every morning. If I don't, I forget people's names.
Okay, yeah, it's good for the brain. Yes,
I forget everything if I don't have my mushroom drops in the morning. It's kind of sad how that's working in my elder state. but it does work. I mean, the science on mushrooms right now. I mean, mushroom coffee is everywhere, and
Yeah,
mushroom
very
tinctures,
popular.
and it's been pretty interesting to see this explosion of mushroom technology, if you will.
Yep.
Let me talk about a different
Yes.
mushroom because
Okay,
this has
thank
been
you.
your
Yeah.
expertise, and I really wanted to. There's two things I'm going to talk to you about. You wrote a great article with Dr. Stan Koska, and I want to talk about that. But let's get into the fairy ring research.
Okay, yes.
Here's another question I want to ask you: Is Berks campus the only research facility on the branch campus system, or are there other branch campuses? I mean, how many branch campuses at Penn State now?
Yeah, well, there's 20 branch campuses. Okay,
Is there any
University
other
Park.
facility like yours on the branch campuses?
No, no, ours is
I
the
didn't
only
think
one that
so.
has an ag center. Now, the campus in Erie, the Barron campus in Erie, Pennsylvania,
Grapes.
that has a big arboretum, but they don't have ag production or ag research.
Okay.
Altoona and Harrisburg are other big campuses, but there's no ag research there. But the Mont Alto campus is closing, and they did forestry there, and they're going to move the forestry program to Altoona, so they'll have some forestry research
Mont
there.
Alto is closing. That's depressing.
Yeah, the
That was like
university's
where all the cool kids went when I was at Berks.
well, correct, exactly. That's been the original school of forestry was there,
Yeah.
moved to University Park. The university is closing 5 to 7 branch campuses, and consolidating others in an
Yeah.
effort to,
That's too bad.
yeah, yes, unfortunately for those areas, but there'll hopefully still be opportunities for students to
Yeah.
attend Penn State, going to other campuses. But yeah, Berks campus is the only one with an ag center. We have greenhouse. We have a small arboretum there as well, and a small greenhouse and some hoop houses, and the only one with turf and the only one with a par 4 golf hole.
There you go.
Several years ago, we installed a par 4 golf hole thanks to Turf Equipment Supply Company for donating the irrigation and all that. And so yeah, we can brag we're the only one. Yep.
Now, is that because they asked you to go up to the university and you said, no, I want to stay closer to home? I've always assumed this was
Yeah.
your doing, that you were able to initiate that whole facility there.
Oh yeah, well, it was they wanted me to really start, or there was an ag when I started in 2000. There was an ag program there that primarily horticulture, but I was hired to expand it. And yeah, I've enjoyed being at the branch campus in
I bet.
southeastern PA and Mid
Yeah.
Atlantic region. University Park is great, great college town. But personally, it's been a blessing to be here in this region. I
And
have
your
5
family too.
children,
Yeah, I was gonna
and my
say your
wife was
family's
happy
all,
to be
yeah.
close to family.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, I can't complain. Yeah.
Here's another ridiculous
Yeah.
question, but do
Yeah.
horticulture students go up to the campus after 1 year still? Or when I was there, I got to the main campus after 1 year because I was a horticulture student.
Yes.
So they still
No,
go. You don't have.
no, they usually like to keep them 2 years because there's the intro biology classes and chemistry and some of the gen eds. And so typically it's the first and second year at the branch campuses,
Okay.
Perks especially. And
When
then,
I was there, it was 1 year, and I didn't know that until I got there. And I'm thinking I was going to be there for 2 years, and I had budgeted for that. And then they said, no, you have to go up to main campus. I'm like, oh, cool. That's very cool.
right.
But then all of my friends switched your engineering degrees to horticulture so they could go
Oh,
up to the main campus
I
and
can
then
see that.
switch back when they got there. Not that I'm
That old
telling
trick.
any illegal
Yeah, no,
secrets.
there's checks and balances now. Of course, when you went, uh, that's what you had the tri-semester system then when
Yes,
you
we
went
did. We were on tri-semesters. Yeah.
every 10 week tri-semester. Now
Yeah.
it's
2 years,
15
yeah,
week
half years,
semesters.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was interesting. I mean, I'm not sure I loved it, but it was, it went by fast. You got to finals really quickly. So
Yeah.
let's talk fairy ring.
Yes.
How
Yes.
long have you been studying fairy ring? Let me talk, give me the history of
Mm.
your background and your work with fairy ring and where it's, how it started and when it started.
Wow, that's a great question, Joel. So let's see. I mean, I knew about it as an undergraduate and graduate student,
Sure.
studied turfgrass,
But you've
course,
really
taking
become the
turfgrass.
specialist in fairy ring and
Yeah,
internationally.
well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been by default. I guess I
That's all right.
started like as a grad student. I started my PhD at University of Maryland, 1991, under Pete Dernoden,
Right?
and my Dr. Dernoden. He's retired now and
He
lives in
is.
Maryland, and my focus is on Rhizoctonia blight, brown patch mathematical modeling, plant disease epidemiology. but got involved with Pete working on, well, testing, evaluating all kinds of fungicides for dollar spot and other diseases, and fairy ring included. So that was my first really opportunity to actually put out some test plots and apply fungicides to see if we can manage fairy ring. But then when I was in industry from 95 to 2000, I worked for Agrivo, and Agrivo had the ProStar fungicide.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
So we did a lot of work
Forgotten
with
you were doing that.
ProStar.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, great experience
I
working in
bet.
industry.
Yeah.
And ProStar was a great fungicide and at the time for managing fairy ring. So I got really involved in that. Now PBI Gordon has the product now. It's called Pedigree as a liquid formulation. But back then it was ProStar as a wettable powder. And then when I started at Penn State in 2000, I continued diving into fairy ring, looking at the soils, and no one else was studying it, but I was just so curious about it. It's a challenging beast to work with.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's you're dealing with the soil, and I had a soils background at Penn State working with Dr. Waddington and at University of Maryland also taking soils courses. So I had I think a curiosity about how this Basidiomycete interacts with the soil, how it grows, because it reminds me of growing mushrooms as a lad.
I was going to say, it's right up your alley. It's a mushroom.
It really is. The fungal in the mushroom production house, the fungal mycelium colonizes the substrate and breaks down the organic matter. And then through a series of wetting and drying and environmental manipulation, we produce the mushrooms and then harvest them. And the same thing happens in turf. That mycelium is breaking down the soil, the thatch, organic matter. And you get these sort of combination of wet, dry cycles, and the fairy ring fungus, the Basidiomycete, wants to go in the reproductive phase, and that's where you see the dark green rings or the necrotic rings and that kind of thing. And I'll tell you real quick, when I first started studying this, well, when I got to Penn State, I called a guy named Drew Smith. Now he was a professor in the University of Saskatchewan, and he was colleagues with Dr. Noel Jackson, University of Rhode Island, and they wrote that textbook, The Diseases of Amenity Turf Grasses, Smith-Jackson-Woolhouse.
That's where I knew
classic
that name.
turf pathology textbook. And Noel Jackson, great guy, knew him, my academic grandfather, and talked to him about fairy ring. But I picked up the phone and called Drew Smith. Well, I called the plant pathology department. He's retired. They gave me his home phone number, and I talked to him. We talked for a couple of hours, 2 hours on the phone at least, about fairy ring, because he did a lot of work back in the 50s, 60s, into the 70s.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's almost like I was learning from the Godfather, right? The original,
exactly.
The original Godfather of fairy ring. And then he passed away several months after that. But I always tell young people, don't hesitate to call somebody or visit somebody if you're thinking about it. You want to ask somebody questions. Because to me, it was just so valuable to talk to him over the phone, to get some insight into how to go about studying fairy rings and how to go about looking at the soil. And that's what led me to looking at the soil, the chemistry of the soil, the ammonium content in the soil that builds up at these fairy ring affected sites,
The ammonium builds up from the fairy ring or fairy rings in
the way the mycelium
into
is
ammonium rich soils.
Right. I think you're right. The ammonium is breaking the mycelium is breaking down that organic matter, right? And it's colonizing the soil, breaking down organic matter. The ammonium is released, and typically, right, like we teach in Soils 101, the ammonium the ammonia comes into contact with water, forms ammonium. The ammonium is broken down by nitrosomonas and nitrobacter and becomes nitrate.
Yep.
And that's nice free nitrogen for the turf to take up. But that ammonium builds up because it's not converted to nitrate. Why? The bacteria is not there to convert it because the hydrophobic conditions caused by the fairy ring, the mycelium, and the interaction that's going on there. And so that ammonium just builds up. And one of the studies we did early on was, I think in healthy turf, there was maybe 5 or 7 parts per million ammonium under healthy turf. But in the fairy ring affected sites, it was up to 300, almost 400 parts per million. Just a tremendous amount of ammonium there, just literally, really pulling water out of the roots or preventing those roots are just struggling in that environment. Geez, and that's why you see those necrotic rings showing up overnight, just dead zones and dead
because
parks.
of that. Now, is it the fairy ring absorbing the ammonia? What's the interaction of the ammonium with the fairy ring? I mean, is it
Well, I think the fungus is break the fungal organism itself, the mycelium. It's these are wood decaying fungi, right?
yeah,
And they're breaking down organic matter. They're trying to get to the lignin in the roots and the thatch, and they're colonizing that soil. And as they're breaking down the material, the ammonium is released. Now, but then there's not enough moisture in that root zone, and there's not, and the bacteria aren't there to do their job to convert the ammonium to.
if there's not
to nitro-
moisture, it's not going to be able to. Yeah,
So it's a byproduct of just
yeah,
the fairy ring fungus is just trying to live its life cycle.
right.
It's just
Like we
trying to
all
do
are.
its thing, and the ammonium just gets released as a result of its colonization, and that ammonium just builds up and builds up and builds up, and it actually goes back to there was a publication in 1807. As turf grass scientists nerds, we read these
Yeah,
old
I
articles.
read the same nerdy things. Yes, I know.
Oh my God, it's so funny, right? 1807, there was an article written by a British scientist, and he took soil samples from underneath these fairing affected sites in pastures and did some rudimentary laboratory analysis of the soil and indicated that there was high levels of ammonia built up in that soil. So that was 1807. Now today our soil chemistry extracts and soil tests are much more sophisticated.
Yeah, I hope
So I
so.
kind of repeated that study, but uh, I'm taking soil samples in a replicated field trial research way, sending them off to a lab and getting them analyzed correctly or modern ways for ammonium. So anyway, the idea of looking at the ammonium in the soil, I wish I could have said I thought of it, but it goes back to 1807, and I just borrowed it and took it to the next levels. The
Well,
young
that's
people
brilliant.
say.
That's what you should be doing. Yeah, that's
Well,
perfect.
you have to
Yeah,
look at the previous
exactly. I mean, it's
literature.
there somewhere, right? We're not
Yes.
yeah, we don't have to reinvent everything.
Yep.
Let
And the
me ask
first
you.
article, the first art, uh, the Royal Philosophical Society, there was a paper presented in 1675 discussing fairy ring. So we go way
Wow.
back.
Wow. So you've got history in this stuff.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand this. I mean, my understanding, it sounds like what you're talking about is the nitrification process, right? So things are breaking
Yep.
down. The first breakdown is that ammonium stage, and that
Yes.
tends to be fairly volatile. It'll leach off, it'll volatilize out, but without the environment where biology can get it into nitrite.
Right.
So it's that stage where this all activity is happening. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Exactly right. That's
That makes
correct. Yeah.
sense. I mean, yeah, because I mean, you get a lot of breakdown there, and and that tends to be a very volatile step in the nitrification process. But
Yeah.
that's the piece where that particular fungi will really take hold and run with. When I got into the business, and I don't want this to sound self-serving, but I'll throw it out anyway.
No, no, good.
When I got into the business, this is 1990. The general consensus was this was all caused by organic matter. It's organic matter
Okay.
in the soil that causes fairy ring. That's it. And it actually caused us quite a bit of grief because we were selling organic fertilizers, and people
Oh,
were saying, and I still get this question. People were saying, well,
okay.
you don't want to put anything organic down. But when I started really reading, well, two things happened. But at that time, right as this whole conversation was going on, they were coming out with the California method of construction, which is no
Oh,
organic matter at all.
right.
And the
Yeah.
worst thing that happened to these guys that were building these California models was fairy ring. They were getting fairy ring at the wazoo. I don't know if that's a real
Yeah.
word. But I mean, does that and then, having studied your work for so long, it sounds like what the conclusion today is that this, and you kind of already said this, is that this is really more about moisture. And it looks like the work that you've done is really about finding ways to create a moisture level in the soil so that that ammonium doesn't just sit there. And biology, and obviously then I'm going to extrapolate, being the soil
Yeah.
biologist that I think I am,
Yes.
that this is an environment, we're creating an environment for microbes to really move this through. And now, so if I'm hearing you right, what's happening is we increase biology, we get nitrification to go through into nitrite. That environment is reduced. Is that a fair conclusion, or am I completely
No,
off
yeah,
base?
I think you're right. You're correct. The soil biology is very important. The other part is the soil hydrophobicity, the water
Right.
repellent root zone that happens because of these ferrying fungi. these basidiomycetes create the hydrophobic environment. So roots are going to struggle to get water and nutrients because the environment's hydrophobic. Plus, there's a buildup of ammonium. Plus, the
Right.
soil biology is not there. But you made a good point though about the sand. These farrowing fungi, they love sand soils.
Yes, there's
They're
no
actually
moisture. There's no biology. There's no
right.
humus.
Now they're in native soils as well, mineral soils, but
Yeah,
they
of
are
course.
really prevalent in sandy soils, and and the organic matter part. I've seen farrowing on sites with a substantial amount of organic matter, and I've seen farrowing on sites with very little organic matter.
Yeah.
And yes, if you have a fatchy site, sure, that could create a more favorable environment for
Well,
farrowing
it's going to
fungi,
dry
as
out
many other
faster,
things
right?
too.
Yeah.
Say again, sir?
It's going to dry out faster.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And then the work over the years that we looked at in a lot of studies where I get the best farrowing management, control, suppression, whatever you want to call it, if we can manage the soil moisture to make it more uniform and consistent over time.
Right.
And that's where these soil surfactants can really help to avoid the wet dry cycles. You get these wet saturated soil conditions and they dry it down and it gets wet and then it dries down. This triggers the farrowing fungus, the Basidiomycete, to go into its reproductive phase. It's going to get more aggressive, start colonizing, start sequestering
When you
water.
have dry conditions, when you have that environment. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Is,
And it
is it
reminds
is,
me of,
is it true that after I mean I think I've heard you say this, but I know other people are saying it. After a summer of high drought, is the
yeah,
fairy rings activity going to be more prevalent in the following spring because of that stretch of drought?
I believe so. I've seen that. That fungus is there in the soil. Look, these fungi have been around, hundreds of millions of years before
Yeah,
plants,
before us. Yeah,
way before
long
us.
before us. Yeah,
And
this is
they're
their
in the
house, not
soil.
ours.
They're nature's decomposers.
Yeah,
There's been some studies that show how these farrowing fungi, as they're colonizing the soil, they're called ecosystem engineers. They try to break down the soil to create a favorable environment for itself. And usually they sort of kind of live in harmony until we get these drought stress periods. And then the visual symptoms, they're more pronounced. We'll see the dark green rings, or we'll see
yeah.
the necrotic dead rings, dead arcs. We'll see mushrooms popping up. That's that nature reminds us that it's there. And
And
you're
that's
right.
all different species, right?
According to the literature, there's about 60 species
Wow.
that cause farrowing fungi and turf, but we probably see about 10 or 12 more common than others. And that's what's kind
But
of
the
interesting.
the ones that guys call killer fairy ring, that's a whole different species than the ones that just simply calls the rings.
Well, I think you can get those like agaricus is a common genus that causes farrowing symptoms. Marasmus is another one. Some of the puffball types, and they may have just the type 2 symptoms or just the dark green rings, and then they'll sort of fade away after the nitrogen release, and then the turf takes it up, or and then they fade away and everything looks fine, or you can apply some nitrogen or iron to mask the symptoms.
Right.
The type 3 symptoms, the mushrooms sort of pop up literally overnight and you can mow them off. The type 1 symptoms is when you have the necrotic dead zones, dead turf. And you can get these species that produce all 3 symptoms. So to say there's a certain species that are more
Okay. So it's
prone to
not
be a
what I was
killer
thinking.
species,
Yeah.
yeah, but we see like the puffball types, the lycoperdons and others, and they tend to be they they tend to develop more of the type 1 symptoms on sand-based greens. Um,
Because of the environment?
I believe so. Yeah, they just tend to like Dr. Lee Miller. He's at Purdue University.
Hmm.
He did his PhD at NC State on fairy ring, and I was on his committee, and he was focusing on these puffball types. Vasilium, I think, is the species that he had uncovered, and they just love sand-based greens, and they have a propensity to just create hydrophobic root zones, and then you get that buildup of ammonium. And then Dr. Miller, he dialed in on a preventative fungicide program based on soil temp. Start your your preventative fungicide programs in the spring when soil temps reach around 55 Fahrenheit. But I will say, back in the late 90s, when I was with Agrivo, we conducted a preventative fungicide uh, trial with fairy ring. One of the first ones I can brag documented. We tank mixed a soil surfactant with ProStar, and this was on a Bermuda grass green in Florida. And to your point, from January to May is the sort of the dry season, and that's at the time, and they still see more fairy ring prevalent during those months,
Right.
January to
Yeah.
May. And we made preventative applications in the fall going into the winter, and March showed up, and I was down in Florida, and basically 9 putting greens. We split 9 greens. Half was untreated, half treated with ProStar and a soil surfactant. And sure enough, every treated side was clean. Every untreated side had all kinds of type 1 dead rings show up.
Yeah.
Like, wow, okay, we're on to something here. And that's kind of what started me on looking at soil moisture and soil fat surfactants to deliver the fungicide, and looking at it, a little differently, kind of like agronomically, not just here's a disease, here's a
Here's
fungicide.
a spray. Thank you.
Let's yeah,
Thank
let's
you
let's
very
look
much
at
for that.
let's look at soil biology, soil chemistry, soil physical properties.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
know it's a
really good
long
school.
answer to the question. Sorry
No,
about
that's a perfect answer. I mean, that's kind of where I was trying to take you. But,
that.
I mean, we look at it, we've been obviously working around fairy ring for a very long time. And by getting an environment where biology can proliferate, we can build humus, we hold moisture, and we're doing what we're doing and listening to what you're saying, and we're like, wow, this makes perfect sense. I mean,
Yeah,
it never made sense that it's, just organic matter. That was in the
right.
1990 early 90s, it was organic matter is going to cause fairy ring. And, like I said, our business was starting. We were going like this, and then all of a sudden we are crashing. And
Oh
then,
wow,
and then
yeah, yeah,
sand-based greens came out and they all had fairy ring. So, but,
right.
and you're starting to really go down this road. Of the whole biological piece. Can I assume, and I'm going to get into this article that you did,
Okay, sure. Yeah.
but can I assume you're kind of going down that road because of this fairy ring work? I mean, you're starting to really peel back the onion, and it sounds
Yeah.
to me like what you're realizing is that this fairy ring issue is moisture and biology, like you say, and if we can create that environment, I guess, again, we're trying to stimulate biology by putting down food sources, and then, people come back to us and say, well, you don't want to put organic matter down. Well, that's not how it really works. It's not like we're not putting a piece of wood down there. We're putting food for microbes
Right.
that'll build humus, digest thatch. And it just sounds to me, and I'm not trying to get you to support us on this. It's just a thought in my head, but it just sounds to me like, going down this road, and it sounds like you're going down this road now,
Yeah.
of soil biology, that, you're going to create the environment. You're not going to eliminate the fungi. You're not going to eliminate the pest, but you're going to create a healthier environment, where the likelihood of these type 2, type 1 fairy rings aren't going to be as prevalent. Is that
Oh,
where you are now?
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, sure, there's your preventative fungicide
Of course there
programs
are.
and
And
all that,
in many cases that's necessary.
but it's let's look at it just like you're saying. Let's look at it from a soil biological standpoint, and I think it started about 10 or 12 years ago. Well, yeah, maybe about 15 years ago. Dr. Stan Koska and myself, we we found ourselves in Vienna,
Oh, lovely.
Vienna, Austria. Not a bad place to be.
Having a
For the,
coffee.
oh yeah, they got good cappuccinos there.
Yes, they do.
Um, for the European Geosciences Union conference, and this is about 15,000 people in attendance. This is the world's leading conference on all things soils, well, geology, geological sciences. There's the volcano people there, all the environmental sciences. And there's one little section, the soil science section. And these are soil physics people.
Oh,
So
wow.
Stan and I, we're in the back row listening to these soil physics people because we had again, just let's dive into this a little bit. We were trying to learn more about soil physics and water movement in the soils and soil biology. Anyway, fascinating. And we got to know many of the soil physics gurus over there. And this is where the interest
That's
started
cool.
in looking. And we've been to several of these kinds of conferences, and we work with scientists over there in Europe. One of our colleagues, Dr. Andrea Carminati, a paisan from
I
northern
was going to
Italy, a
say,
good friend of mine. Yeah, he just published a paper in Science and on the rhizosphere, and that's where I'm leading to, like studying the rhizosphere, that environment in the soil. Now, these soil scientists early on, they would just look at sand, silt, clay, looking at soils. But now they're looking at soils with roots in them, with plants growing in the soil, with biology, with the soil bacteria, all those
And
soil
fungi.
microorganisms and
And the fungi,
fungi.
yeah.
Yeah. And so that got, and I'm not a trained soil microbiologist. I'm an agronomist, plant pathologist, but love diving into this area of the root zone
Yeah,
and the
you got to get
rhizosphere.
down that road a little bit further, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, the
Get
last
it?
10 years,
Yeah,
the research has been really outstanding to
fascinating.
read about because of the measurements and the technology are there now. The computer aided measurements of the root systems and computer imaging that we didn't have 15 to 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
folks can really look at roots and root hairs and really look at the interactions and get these roots functioning. The connectivity that they use the word soil connectivity to get these roots functioning healthy to connect with the soil. And then I wrote this is in golf course manage. Let me hang on a second here.
Golf Course Industry Magazine, and it's
Yeah,
an
or
article
here's
that's in,
GCM.
yeah,
Well,
entitled "The Interactions of Plants,
yeah.
Soil Microbes Under Drought Stress." It's
Yes.
fascinating, and I would encourage everybody that's
Well,
listening,
thank
go
you.
to GCI and get this article because I'm telling you, Dr. Mike, the whole
Yeah.
team here were geeking out over this article. Like,
Well,
wow,
yes.
we got to get him on the podcast.
Oh, well, I appreciate you saying that, and well, I want to talk about that article, but this one in golf course
Oh,
management.
you did, okay,
This is a February's issue.
right. I did see that. Sorry.
And I write the Vidor column. If you can see that. But in my monthly column, the article is rhizobacteria can be your friend, and I write about rhizobacteria. Basically, it mirrors the article that Dr. Koska and I wrote about, and it really dives into the thing where the area of of these rhizobacteria. They colonize our turfgrass roots, and they could support drought stress or um, increase our turf grasses, let's say, tolerance to abiotic stresses. And um, there's again a lot of research in this area. It ties into soil moisture management. It ties into managing the biology of that soil. The biology of that soil is so very important. And the reason why I'm interested in it is like, okay, I love this discovery research and all this, but how does it translate to the end user? How can the golf course superintendent, utilize this information and make the soil biology work for him? That's
I have an
what I want to
idea on
do.
that.
Yeah, I hope you do.
I have a little idea on that.
Well,
Let me read
and to your credit, you've been working in this area for a long time.
40 years, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I was 15 when I started all this, and believe me, when we started it, it
Wow,
was
that's funny.
nobody was talking about soil biology,
Right.
and I was talking to you before we got on, but Jerry Bernetti, who is my mentor and my original business partner, had been talking about it for 20 years. Let me read from that article just real
Yes,
quickly.
please.
There's a couple
Yes.
things that I want to really. The word rhizosheath you came up. I don't know if you came up with it, but you
No.
use it in this thing. But what it says here, significant scientific advances have been made toward understanding how root extracts extract water and nutrients from the soil by the biophysical properties of the rhizosphere, as well as root exudates and mucilage, mucilage is a little bit different than glomalin, which is produced by mycorrhizae, but it's still the byproduct of the biological process in the soil. Soil particle conductivity, porosity, and microbial interactions in the past 5 years. This has led to further insight gained into the importance of the rhizosphere in maintaining plant function and performance under abiotic stress, such as drought. And you get into this article and you talk about these byproducts, these root exudates, and then you come up with this, these substances create what we call now rhizosheath, a thin layer of soil particles adhering closely to the root surfaces. And these are, I'm assuming, biologically active relationships between, the rhizosheath, the root, and all that.
Yeah, the recent research, especially coming out of Europe, but also here in the United States, especially at a couple of universities, uh, are focused on the rhizosheath, more on the ag side, right?
Right. Well, that's where the work is, right?
Exactly, because you're thinking like these for plant breeding purposes. If you're going to develop a new wheat cultivar or corn or soybean, let's stick with grasses, corn and wheat. You want a functioning root system, and if they can have a more robust rhizosheath, in other words, that the plant root exudates, right? Coming into contact with the bulk soil, and sort of creating the, for lack of a better word, the connectivity. Those
Right.
rhizosheaths and those materials and substances, they help the roots, especially the root hairs, maintain a connectivity to the soil. If they're maintaining connectivity, okay, they're going to increase in root moisture uptake and nutrient uptake. So when you're applying fertilizer, right, it's used more efficiently, more effectively.
Breaks it down. Yeah, it gets through nitrification.
And we're working with Dr. Koska and I and Dr. Bigelow at Purdue University. We're working with a professor at the Munich Technical Institute, and he's a rhizosphere and rhizosheath expert. Now he's only worked on ag, but we finally got him to work in turf. So it's kind of exciting to be looking over the shoulder at these really smart people. You know what I
Right.
mean?
That's kind of nice.
And guiding them and say, hey, can you look? Can you do your
Here's
research
what we've
in
seen.
turf?
What do you think?
Yeah, but that's a very. I'm glad you brought that up because what can we do to maintain the connectivity? Through your fertility programs and healthy functioning soil biology. Can we help those roots maintain the rhizosheath and maintain those connections? The root exudates, they're very interesting. There's been some studies that shown that when when the soil dries down and maybe perhaps going through a drought stress situation, those root exudates can help sort of help the root hairs stay sort of functioning and viable to grab onto some water and nutrients. But when it's too wet, when it's saturated soil conditions, those exudates can get a little bit on the hydrophobic side and try to repel the
And
water to
keep the water away. Yeah.
keep the water away. So basically trying to make trying to help that turf, uh, the roots, in other words, grow in an optimum environment.
So what you're saying is plants have an intelligence and they can actually determine when they need moisture or when they need to get it away from them. Is that what
Well,
I'm hearing you say?
in a way, yeah, that's what the research is showing, that the plant roots are communicating with the soil. More importantly, communicating with the soil biology. There's all kinds of work being done now on the rhizobacteria.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a soil biologist,
You
and
should
so
become one. I think you need to be doing, you need to go down
I
that road.
appreciate that.
You're the
Well,
guy
like,
that you're the guy we're going to give the handle to. Are
well,
you
like
you're
looking over the
familiar with
shoulder.
you're familiar with Dr. White's work at Rutgers on rhizophagy?
Not that familiar with, but I know who he is. Yeah, and I know the work.
So
Yeah.
what he's basically, I mean, in his work, and he's actually on the circuit now. He's, as you guys are
Yep.
talking,
Yep.
and Dr. White's fascinating. I mean, he did a whole
Yes.
thing on what he calls rhizophagy, and what he was talking about is the symbiotic relationship between the microbe and the plant, and how the plant can actually
Absolutely.
bring microbes into the root system, and then
Yep.
exit out the root system, creating more root hairs. And I think it's part of, all the little
Absolutely.
pieces become puzzle pieces. And what you're talking about, what he's talking about, it all fits into the same biological soil management, profile. And
Oh,
his work is
absolutely.
fascinating. I mean, we geek out on that one all the time. But
Oh, sure.
when we read your piece, it was, there was all sorts. I mean, the rhizosheath just makes eminent sense. I mean,
Yep.
and the plant's ability to spit out all of this stuff to protect itself makes
Yes.
perfect sense. Drought, disease,
Yep.
insect, I don't care what the stress factor is, abiotic or biotic. It's gonna, the plant's gonna say, I'm not taking this crap. I'm gonna do
Right.
something
Well,
about it.
and from a, if I can say, a practical point of view, I mean, like I say, you were in cooperative extension, and we like to take the research and transfer it to the practitioner. Applying, say, like EarthWorks products to the turf. Could that help the root zone and the rhizosphere and the rhizosheath work better? And so, from a practical point of view, from the golf course superintendent I talked to, is okay. This is great. How does it apply to me? How can it help my putting green? So it helps us dial in some things, and
Yeah.
fertility program, your irrigation, your water management program, using soil surfactants to maintain uniform, consistent soil moisture, and you want to promote healthy biology in the soil, that kind of thing.
One of the things that we've been really desperate for, and this would be a great career move for you. There's no real way in which we can quantify soil biology. I mean, my understanding, and I've
Oh
heard
yeah.
this in the different levels, is that we know 2% of what the microbial, what the population is. I'm sure you're probably familiar or have heard of Dr. Elaine Ingham, who started the Soil
Yes.
Food Web. Unfortunately, I just read last night we lost her. She passed
Okay. Yeah.
last night, and which she was a pioneer. I mean, she was
Right. The
unbelievable.
soil food web. Yep. I
Soil Food
remember.
Web talking about what you're talking about now. But there's no real good. We don't know any good tests that can really identify. There's DNA testing that can show some microbial thing, but DNA could be
Mhm.
around for 1,000 years or more. They're doing respiratory things, which is microbes give off
Right. The CO2 burst
CO2.
test, things like
But
that.
you put it in a bag and it's all dead. So it's. I mean, there's not any good research that shows us this, but
Yeah.
your paper is really going down that road of
Yeah.
biological soil management, which is what we've been preaching for so long. And there's just so much good stuff in this. And again, I'm going to encourage
Well, I
anybody
appreciate that.
to read these articles. But you're going down the road of talking about mycorrhizae, and we know there was work done at USDA back in the
Yeah.
90s finding, glomalin, and we didn't know anything about that. Dr. White's work on rhizophagy, which was five
Yep.
years old now. I mean, I'm at the end of my career, and all this cool stuff is coming out, and
Oh
I'm getting
yeah.
really excited. And I'm like, I wish I was 30 again so I could live
Well,
through this.
well, absolutely. These young scientists have a real chance here.
Yeah.
Like especially like with plant breeders, if you can develop root systems with a more aggressive or robust root hair system, for example,
Right.
to access water and nutrients, that's where that's the future where a lot of this plant physiology research is headed.
And,
Um,
and and what you're doing, I mean, you're going down this road, and you're really kind of doing it because of the fairy ring issue, right? I mean, this is
yeah,
you
I
started this
know.
process and realized that wait a second, this whole fairy ring thing is really a biological thing. Is obviously it's fungi,
Yes.
but it's an environment where the soil is up and down in water management, not so much organic. And if we can
Right.
get if we can get the soil to work correctly. I love this line you wrote here. The research also challenges existing paradigms about soil water repellency and drought stress. What was once considered a problem of surface hydrophonicity now appears more complex, involving intricate root soil interactions at a microscopic scale. So we're really bringing in the microbes into the conversation.
Oh yeah, a lot of work showing some of these bacteria, develop biofilms that can be
Right.
hydrophobic, and some are beneficial and some are not. And
And that's another
it,
one I wanted to talk to you about. That was one that, a lot of the companies were going after, you don't want to have these organic films. And then they keep using this word organic, and they're implying that anything that's organic is going to create this organic layer, which isn't true at all. I mean, it's not how this system works. But talk about that. I mean, some of these organic films are just simply rhizodeposits, right?
correct, yes. I mean, again, there's some work that was published recently out of some of our Europe with our European colleagues really looks at these bacteria that can colonize the roots, and some of these are rapid colonizers of root systems, and it triggers the plant's abiotic defense mechanisms like drought stress, and
Right,
and
right.
it influences stomatal opening and closings, things like that. And again, some of these bacteria produce these biofilms that can be somewhat water repellent or hydrophobic.
Why?
And well, because of the nature of the materials, their substances are such that they're like fatty acids type
Yeah.
materials, and they can be somewhat hydrophobic. So it's good and bad. Again, when the soil is under, maybe say saturated, or maybe it's too wet, you want to protect those roots. You don't want them to drown, so to speak.
Right.
But then when
So they're
it's too
pushing it
dry,
away. Yeah.
exactly. But when it's too dry, you want those substances to become hydrophilic or water loving, to start absorbing water like a sponge.
That's pretty
So
amazing, isn't it? That these plants and the microbiome system that they work
yes.
symbiotically work can do that in the soil.
Oh yeah.
And
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 again,
we never even really knew that. I mean, I didn't study that when I went to Penn State, many
well,
years ago.
exactly. Again, there's much of these are within the last 10 to 12 years,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and I'm just repeating what I'm reading about in some of these scientific journals. I'm like, wow, I wish I had 10 graduate students to work on this.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, but I want to mention too, like with fairy ring, and we talked about the buildup of ammonium. And I think EarthWorks, you guys have that product Ecolite, which
Yep.
is I think that would
The
help.
zeolite mineral, yeah. Well, it
It's the
has a
zeolite,
strong affinity for ammonium.
right?
I mean, I would say, I mean, I'm going to just throw some of my own silly thoughts out, but Ecolite
Yeah.
will absorb that ammonium pretty effectively, but it also
Good.
manages moisture. So when we
Okay.
worked with you on Ecolite and
Yeah, that
then,
was a few years back.
I remember you calling me and asking me about that,
Yeah.
the Ecolite has the ability to, it's a crystal, so when it's wet, much like the plant and microbes are doing, when it's wet, it'll pull it in. When it's dry, it'll release. And I think Dr.
Yeah.
Bigelow actually did some work on this when he was a
Yes.
grad student. But
Yeah.
a material like that, I could see certainly managing that, but certainly taking that
Yeah.
to a biological level and getting that biological soil biome really working will be
Right.
as effective as anything. But that's a harder sell and it's a harder process. It's a longer process. It's not immediate
Yeah.
gratification. It's not. I mean, believe me, I've been doing this for 40
Yeah.
years.
Well, I was
It's
gonna say
not easy.
this isn't like the old use the old tired phrase silver bullet.
It's not a silver bullet, but it's a process. And, it's not
Yeah.
like you can say, but I love that. I think your last line in this article, successful
Yep.
plant management is no longer about treating symptoms, but understanding and supporting the complex underground ecosystem. That, my friend, is the definition of biological soil management.
Yeah.
So
I
see,
appreciate
your
that.
whole new career is going to be a soil biologist. I'm going to help you with this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm ready. I'll take a sabbatical for 6 months and do a
And
deep
yeah,
dive in.
yeah, keep going with this.
But but to your point, it is complex. It's not just one thing.
No, it's not.
We have to look at several things. Well, like you said, it's a complex system. It's exciting to study this, and it is fun for me to to know many of the players in this field. Some of our colleagues over there in Europe and in
Yeah.
the United States too, that work in this area. And like I said, I'm just looking over their shoulder, nudging them in the direction
Good.
of turf grasses.
Nothing wrong with that. You don't
Being an
have to be the leader.
antagonist.
You just have to be the guy that follows through.
Hey, right, a good point. Yes,
I
I
stole everything
appreciate
I knew from Jerry Brunetti. I don't have any original thought in my head,
that.
but I can speak it well. That's all that matters, you
No,
know. One of the interesting things, you talk about European research. I mean, they're definitely getting a lot. I mean, I read a lot of European research
yep,
on the whole soil biome, diseases. I mean, all of this stuff. A lot of good stuff is coming out of Europe. If you were to, please tell me to shut up if this is not appropriate, but how can you get funded to do this kind of work? I mean, can you get funded? Yeah, I know. I mean,
that's it's
that's
a challenge. Like my European colleagues, their funding mechanisms are a little different. The there's an emphasis to use less pesticides, right?
Yeah, they're
And
getting
so
dictated to, and yeah,
right, and but there is more funding available for scientific research, especially agricultural science type
right,
research,
right.
ecology, soil science research. So they have more access to funding than we do here in the States. Now we can apply for U.S. Department of Agriculture type research grants, some industry grants, but it's a lot. And I'm not complaining, but it's just a lot more challenging
Yeah,
to
it's
get
yeah,
funding here in the States. Over in Europe, there's all kinds of different agencies that fund projects that can fund grad students, and dare I say it, maybe it's not as expensive as it would be over here.
right.
So they seem to support more discovery research over there in Europe than we do here in the States. So
Well,
that's going to be a challenge for
we
young
certainly
people here
need
in
you
the States.
guys to be doing this. Maybe Dr. Mike, you move to Italy and you
Ah,
live your good life in Italy and get some research grant and become a soil biologist. I think, drink some vino, have some bread, some cheese. It'd be a great
I
life, wouldn't it?
appreciate that. If I move to Italy, I'm just going to work at my cousin's vineyard. That's what I'm going to
That's
do.
all you need to see. That's her life. There you go. That's the retirement strategy, isn't it? You
No,
know,
I love it.
Here's another silly question. You watch golf on TV and you see all these courses in the country in our country and you see very little fairy ring. But man, when we see the Open, all of those, Scottless courses, fairy ring
Yeah.
is everywhere. They just seem to live
Yes.
with it, right? And I assume that's because again of the way they manage moisture. They don't water the way we water.
I believe you're correct there. And also talking to some years ago when I first went to the British Turf Conference in Harrogate, and I go every year. It's a really great show. Of course, the GCSA conference is great too. But talking to some of the old Scottish, those folks from Scotland, some of the old timers, they would say that to see type 2 dark green rings, to see fairy ring on their greens and fairways was a badge of honor. In other words, they dried down the soil so much that fairy ring showed up. And yeah, so it's kind of an accepted concept over there. Now they don't want them to become type 1. They don't want them to turn
How do they? Yeah, I was going to
product.
say, how do you? I mean, so they're only dealing with type 2. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, now
Yeah,
if it dries down a little more than they could become type 1 very easily.
yeah.
But they're living on the edge. But you're right, on TV you see the type 2 rings, and it's just kind of accepted. It's very lean. Uh, they hold back the water, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of accepted. Yeah, uh,
I haven't
but
done a lot of work over there, but the work that I have done has been pretty biologically focused. I mean, those guys, they've been using carbon-based materials for a long time, feeding microbes, kelp
yes, yeah,
meals and
I
fish
agree.
meals and
Yeah, a lot of seaweed
compost.
extracts.
Yeah,
Yep.
seaweed extracts. I mean, all of these things are going to feed microbes. So I could see where they could keep that type 2 in balance and
Right,
because obviously
right.
they're not getting type 1 or they'd be losing grass left and right.
Right. I mean, yeah, they'll get on type 1 on occasion. I'll get a phone call or email,
Yeah.
but usually they're dealing with the type 2, the dark green rings, and it just sort of blends in, and you'll see a dark green ring, then it'll fade, and but I always get a kick when the Open Championship is on television.
And you're
I'll get
watching, you're
I'll
watching
watch it,
for
and I'll
fairy
get calls
ring.
from people. Hey, did you see that fairy ring
Yeah.
on TV?
So you're taking pictures and putting on your
Yeah.
what's your Friday thing called?
On
Your
on yeah, when we started that years ago, hashtag Frisky Fairy Ring
frisky fairy.
Friday.
I
Started out with
love it.
Dr. Derek Settle and Dr.
Yeah,
Henry
yeah.
Wetzel. And it's been great. Every Friday, folks post fairy ring pictures, and it's fun to talk about. Well, to see mushrooms on a golf course is a beautiful thing to see the
Yeah, I'm
mushrooms.
sure you
It's
think
nature. You
that.
know, we don't want to see type 1 rings.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to see that. But the beautiful mushrooms popping up. But
In
Joe,
ti-
I tell people don't eat the mushrooms.
oh, I wouldn't think so.
Be
Yeah, yeah,
safe. Be safe. Don't
yeah.
eat any.
Are they edible? Could they be edible?
Well, some fairy ring fungi are edible and some are
Yeah.
poisonous. Yeah, they really
Oh,
are.
okay. So there could be some poison.
There are some
So
poisonous ones. Yeah.
so type 2 is the ring, type 3 is the mushroom. Type 1 is there mushrooms associated in type 1 or is it just
Yes.
dead grass?
Sometimes what you'll see is if it's a necrotic ring or arc or a semicircle, you'll see that dead zone, and on the outer edge of that dead zone,
The
sometimes you'll
mushroom.
see mushrooms
You'll
popping
get
up.
okay, so
You
you've
see that
got
on pastures, on grass
yeah.
pastures, because it's not mowed like a turf is mowed on a regular basis.
Right, right,
So you
right.
may not see the mushrooms popping up, but you can often see those. So the type 1, type 2, type 3 visual symptoms, they can all occur at the same time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to wrap up here
Oh,
quickly, but
thank
I
you.
want
Yeah.
you to tell folks listening. So you've got fairy ring. Other than spraying, what's the cultural practices? I mean, you're talking about trying to find ways to eliminate ammonium, but what do you
Right.
tell people now culturally, not chemically?
Right, yeah, because there's many fungicides labeled for fairy ring, preventative, curative,
Right.
so we can do that. But culturally, first of all, manage soil moisture and manage your watering. You use soil surfactants to maintain uniform and consistent soil moisture, starting in the spring through the summer and the fall. Try to maintain consistent soil moisture over time. Avoid the wet dry cycles. Okay. Manage organic matter. Obviously, if you, I mean you need organic matter in the soil, right? But not you got fatty sites or sites that are
You
overly
want good
fatty.
organic matter, isn't it?
You
Isn't
want,
that
you're
what you're
right.
saying? You want good organic matter, not bad organic matter.
You're right. Exactly. Pay attention to that. And then, as we talked about the soil biology, you want to poke holes, core cultivation, but really needle tine. You want to get air into that oxygen into that root zone, especially if
Yeah.
fairing is active. You want to mitigate some of that ammonia
Yeah.
buildup.
It's funny
But
you
the
say
soil
that.
biology would get. Yes, what's
When
that?
when I when I teach my classes, I always ask my class, what's the most important nutrient in turf? And they come up with all sorts of goofy answers.
Yes.
But the answer that I'm trying to get them to get to is oxygen.
Joe, that is so true.
And what
Oxygen.
you're saying is that you're keeping the oxygen. So the oxygen is just feeding microbes, right? I mean, is that so
Yes, yes.
you're basically keeping a checks and balances there.
Uh,
So if we've
right.
got a good population of microbes, we're going to keep the pathogens, the fungi pathogens in check.
I believe that's correct. Yeah, the
Okay.
soil moisture and then soil biology. Do what you have to do. Do what you can to maintain healthy roots, functioning roots, and soil biology is so key there. If you do all those things, you'll mitigate or manage fairing. It won't be as severe, or the fairing. I mean, the incidents won't be as common. You may see some symptoms here and there, but you don't want to see it explode to type 1. You don't want to see dead
Right.
rings out
Right.
there.
Yeah. And
So
again, like
yeah,
I said earlier, but I see this all the time, and I say this to superintendents: if they had a big droughty summer, fairy ring is going to be more prevalent. What's the management cultural practice there? Just keeping the moisture through the drought. I mean, if you can of course, it's not easy to do without spending a
right,
zillion dollars on water, but
right.
even if you're managing moisture well as a golf course superintendent through a drought, you're
Yeah.
still going to be pressured. These fungal spores are going to come in even in those environments.
Oh yeah. On a prolonged drought stress, I mean,
Yeah,
do what you can to grow and maintain healthy roots, right? With a water management program that includes soil surfactants, with
yeah,
managing
that's
soil
important.
biology. Just do what you can to get through, and then think about next year. Okay, there's going to be a tremendous amount of basidiomycete fungi inoculum in that soil. So what do I need to do next year? If you're thinking about preventative fungicide programs, or let's call it preventative cultural practices and programs, through your fertility programs and
Right,
through
right.
aerifying and things like that. Give yourself a little heads up. Like think, okay, next year I better know that fairing fungi, it's here,
It's going to
it's
be
living
there.
in my soil, so I got to prepare for
He's he's
it.
he's a he's a guest in the guest house and not paying his bill. Basically,
Right,
what he's doing.
and they're not going anywhere. The
They're
fairing
not going.
fungi.
Exactly. You can't get them out of there. What is the fungicide du jour today? I know a lot of things have changed in the world of fungicides for furrowing. Where are you with that today?
Oh man, there's so many fungicides labeled for fairing today. So I mentioned ProStar. Now it's called Pedigree. But there's
Same
the
chemistry,
Strobies.
just a different branding.
Exactly. Now it's a
Okay.
liquid formulation. And again, there's many fungicides labeled for fairing, and they all work very effectively. They all work, but they also can fail because they have to be watered in, and that's a very key point I want to make. You're going to apply fungicide, either preventatively or curatively. You got to water them in. Oftentimes, they can be watered in with the soil surfactant. But again, check the labels, double check all the labels on this. They have to be watered in. Where I see products, fungicides fail, they're not watered in enough.
Right. Is the fungi living deep in the soil?
It can. That's why it
That's why
helps
you
to
have to
pull
water it
soil
in.
core and
Okay.
pull soil profile. Most fairing fungi are near the surface and in the thatch. The late Dr. Houston Couch called them lectophilic. They're thatch loving. But
Right.
some of those
I remember
fungi can
that.
be more edaphic. They live 1 or 2 inches below the soil, even a little deeper. So it helps to pull soil core, do a water drop penetration test, perhaps to see if there's any hydrophobic layers or water repellent layers there. But that'll give you an indication of how deep the water. Because folks ask me, well, how much water? Well, 3 minutes of the head, 5 minutes of the irrigation head, whatever. Well, water it enough to get it into the thatch, into that
It
upper
depends on their
soil.
soil, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. It depends. It depends. So any fungicide you choose, again, there are many fungicides labeled for fairing. They're all effective if they're applied effectively, if they're
Right.
delivered
Right.
effectively. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Wow. I can't thank you
Anyway,
enough, my friend. It's a real
wow,
pleasure.
this went by fast.
Let me know what I can do to help you because I want to make you a
Thank you,
soil
Joel.
biologist. I think this could
Oh,
be a
yeah.
great career path for you. And there's a self-interest here for me. I'd love to be able to
Well,
drive,
thank
an
you.
hour to see you and talk soil biology
Well, thank you
sometime.
very much. Well, I call myself a soil biologist antagonist. I'm trying to get all the soil biologists and soil biophysics people in the same room to talk about turf roots.
Now,
That's
if I
my
can have an invite and I'll sit in the back and be quiet, I would love that. That would just
excellent.
be a
Oh, thank you,
thrilling
Joel.
thing.
Well,
Um,
you got to go to seriously. In all seriousness, you should go to Vienna. The conference is always like in late April. the European Geosciences Union conference, and that's where all the soil physics and soil biophysics people go.
I would love
You
that.
should
I would
attend that.
absolutely love that. I've never been to Vienna. I want to go badly. It's funny you say that, but I would
Yep.
love to. I would love to sit there and listen to some of these people talk. I don't
Oh,
know. I hope I wouldn't fall asleep like I did in first year, Dr. Waddington's class. But and I don't. I hope he
no,
doesn't mind me saying that. But yeah, here I am working as an agronomist and falling asleep in my first agronomy classes at Penn
too
State.
funny.
But that's all good. Dr.
Yeah,
Mike, I
Joe,
can't thank you enough.
Penn
I
State
can't
fan.
thank you enough for all the work you're doing.
Thank you
I would
very
really
much.
want you to, continue this. And I want to encourage anybody that they ever even think about fairy ring, get online and pull up some of the work you're doing. I mean, like I said,
Thank you, Joe.
it's been very frustrating for us because it's been, all organic matter, but it's really
Man,
moisture and biology and all the things that we're saying.
correct.
And I love the work. I love the fact that you're going down this road of soil biology and
Oh, it's fine. Well, like you, we love learning new things, and
yeah. It's great, isn't it?
I'm curious. I want to know what's going on here.
Yeah,
You know,
like I said, I want to have another 30 years of my career so I can watch some of this. I
I
might watch it
know.
peripherally, hopefully from the rocking chair maybe, but
No, it's an exciting time for young scientists.
yeah, it
Absolutely.
really is. Like, you can, of course, now with the internet, you got all these outlets that you can find people that are talking about this. I follow a guy named Mika Slota from Poland, I think, and
Okay.
he's doing some really, micron telescope stuff, and it's just
Nice.
fascinating. But
Right.
you can find a lot of this on LinkedIn and some of the,
Yes.
things that you're sitting around geeking over. But anyway, we
Right.
could talk for another 2 hours, Dr. Mike.
Oh,
I
absolutely. Thank you, Joel.
We'll
Yeah.
have to do it again sometime, but thank you so much.
Yes.
Best of
Yeah.
luck to you. And folks, if you haven't subscribed, we're going to tell you we got cool people coming on like Dr. Mike Fidanza. So thank you, Dr. Mike.
Thank
And
you, Joel. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
I may pop over one of these days and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out. I'd
Oh,
be more,
please. Yeah. Thank you.
more
And
than
thank you,
helpful, more
EarthWorks,
than
for all you've
grateful to
done for
help
the
you out.
industry. Yep. Thank you
Yeah,
very much. Appreciate
appreciate
it,
it.
Joel.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Take care. Thank you.